Good afternoon folks, and welcome to another episode of Talking Tabletop. Today we are going to be delving into another beginner's guide on that aspect that we all love from Warhammer 40K, combat. So we're going to be looking at how hit rolls and wound rolls are used in Warhammer 40,000, and that's all to do with dice rolling. That's the core of the game, and understanding how these mechanics work will make you more confident and skilled as a player in no time at all. So, let's talk combat. Every time that you attack in Warhammer 40k, the process begins with there's three stages, okay? And it begins with a hit roll, it'll then move on to a wound roll, and it then ends with a saving throw. So today we're going to focus on the first two, which is making attacks hit and figuring out if they would or if they wound the target. So first things first, select the weapon that you're using from your stat sheet. So in this case here we can see there's a Stormbolter, and there's also a melee weapon, which is a relic weapon as well. Now in terms of each one, we can see here from the sheet there are 2 attacks for the Stormbolter and there are 6 attacks for the relic weapon. Now that basically tells us how many dice we are going to be rolling in order to hit using that particular weapon. So then we lead on to our hit roll. So in this case here we're going to say let's pick the Stormbolter for discussion purposes. So in terms of Stormbolter, it's got a ballistic skill here of a 2+, and the melee weapon, which is a relic weapon, has a weapon skill of a 2+ as well. Now to start an attack you make your hit roll based on that characteristic. So for melee weapons it is the WS, the weapon skill, and for ranged weapons we use our BS, which is our ballistic skill. So again, check the datasheet for the stats of the units you're using, and what happens is if you roll equal or higher than the value on your datasheet for your unit, then the attack hits. Now there's 2 kind of standard rules as well, and these are that a natural 6 always hits and is classed as a critical hit, and when we then talk about a natural 1, it will fail to hit regardless of any modifiers that are in play in the game. That's easy, right? Now let's see what happens after you hit. So after you hit, we then look at the wound roll. Now once the attack hits, you'll roll to see if it wounds the target. So what you would do here is any dice that you've previously rolled that had a number that hits based on your ballistic skill or your weapon skill, you will then take those dice and you roll them again for your wound hits. Now once an attack hits, you compare your strength, or the strength of the weapon, versus the toughness of the opponent that you're attacking. You compare the weapon strength to toughness to determine what number you then need to roll on another d6 when you do your wound rolls. Now in terms of our wound rolls, we are going to then have to kind of think about it. So the rules are fairly straightforward, but people can get bogged down by them. So here's how it works. If your strength is at least double the toughness of your opponent, you will wound on a 2+. If your strength is higher but not double, you wound on a 3+. If strength is equal to toughness, you wound on a 4+. If it is lower than toughness, you wound on a 5+, and if the strength is half or less than the toughness, you wound on a 6+. So obviously that should make sense as well. If you're going up against a really heavily armoured opponent, you're fighting with a very weak weapon, it's going to take quite a significant chance for it to actually inflict a wound. However, if you're attacking with something that's super powerful compared to toughness, then it should wound really easily, and that's how the wound rolls then reflect that in their values. Okay, so comparing the 2 stats is quite important, and one of the things at the table you're going to be asking your opponent, and what's the toughness of that unit, what's the toughness of this, and you should know your strengths from your data slates as well. Okay, so here is a handy cheat sheet I've made to help keep track of this as well. Feel free to pause it, copy it and screenshot it, and then you can use it in your own games. And here it is. So you've got strength along up the left hand side, you've got toughness along the top, and you can see there that when it is equal it's always a 4+. When toughness is greater it goes 5s and 6s, when toughness is less it goes 3s and 2s, and it's colour coded as well for a bit of ease. So feel free to pause and use that yourself. Now one thing as well about wound rolls, and this comes into play more with special rules like that are used by different units. If we look at wound rolls, natural 6 always hits, and is classed as a critical wound. So when you get certain scenarios, they'll say a critical wound becomes something else, and as a result it's unblockable, things like that. And a natural 1 on a wound roll is a complete fail regardless of any modifiers. Okay, but you can see from the chart there as well, all wound rolls seem to go from a 2 plus up to a 6 plus, so 1 is just a fail, outright fail. Okay, now the question you've got to then go is, let's break it down with a wee example. A Space Marine shooting at orcs. Okay, Space Marine's bolt rifle have a strength of 4 and the orcs have a toughness of 5. So strength is less than the toughness here, so a Space Marine would need to roll a 5 plus to wound. After rolling 10 dice, let's say 4 of them land on a 5 or a 6, and that means that 4 wounds are then successfully caused against that unit of orcs. So why does strength actually matter? Why is it all important? If we consider the toughness and strength mechanics, they reflect how well weapons are going to perform against different enemies. So high strength weapons and low strength weapons will have different applications. So if we think about the last gun here, it's got a strength of 3. It's suitable for low toughness targets such as light infantry, and it's better suited for swarming weaker enemies. If on the other hand we then look at the missile launcher, it's got a strength of 9. So that is going to be good against high toughness targets like vehicles, elite infantry, and it's going to then kind of have a greater impact on those elite units. So choosing the right weapon for the right target is kind of one of the strategic keys to success in the game as well. So that's where you have to then think about, when you're doing your unit loadouts, what's going to be the most worthwhile for the unit you're making and against the units that you're going to be fighting. And we're going to finish off here just with some tips for beginners. So you should always check your weapon skill and ballistic skills for accuracy when you're selecting your units. Compare strength and toughness before rolling to avoid any mistakes. Don't forget the universal rules: 6s always succeed, 1s always fail. And practice. The more you roll, the faster you'll start to understand these mechanics based on the units you're using. So, I hope this video has been useful to you. By all means, please like, subscribe and leave a comment underneath. If you want to see any specific content, let us know. If you are quite happy with the way things are going, let us know, but obviously just get in touch. I'm always happy to reply back to people and get a bit of conversation and discussion going. So, for this week, enjoy talking tabletop and we'll see you next week.